Hello and welcome back to Breathe More. I am excited for today's guest. Gina is actually my money coach, and I've been working with her for a whole year now. And I know some of you who I work with one on one or in my mastermind. I have mentioned Gina. Go listen to her podcast, check out her program, because so many of us struggle with money, especially women, especially those of us who are first generation. Like we have all of these money stories that I believe are blocking our abundance. And I know for me, this has been something that I have actively had to heal and reprogram. And then Gina was like my one practical investment of like, okay, I've been doing a lot of the mindset reworking and rewiring around money and abundance. But what do I do with it now? Like, what do I do with the money and not feel afraid? Or I don't know what to do with retirement. I'm in my mid 40s now, and I just started investing 4 years ago, basically, when my business became a corporation. And for so long, I felt so behind and also ashamed. And since I joined Gina's Seven Figure Wealth Mastermind a year ago, I have felt so empowered and clear. And as Gina says, unbothered with money. And so it has been such a blessing to be in her energy and learn from her. And I'm so excited that you're here today, Gina, so that our listeners can learn about you and become a little bit more unbothered with money. So,
Yes.
welcome, Gina.
Thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm so glad to be here.
So, why don't you tell people what exactly you do? What do you specialize in? And a little bit about your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I am a money coach for small business owners of all kinds. My background is actually in design. So, I don't have a traditional finance background. I went to California College of the Arts in San Francisco for interaction design. And when I graduated, I always had a very strong desire and like penchant to work in money and around money. So I got a job at Intuit, the makers of TurboTax and QuickBooks. And I was a small business researcher there for 5 years, where my whole job was to interview small business owners about their books, their finances, how they did things, and then take that information, bring it back to our engineering and design teams and be like, here's what business owners are actually struggling with. Here's what we actually need to design because we're all a group of like high paid tech workers who have no idea what it's like to run a business. So that was my whole job. And I loved it. I loved my coworkers. It was a good company. I was compensated well. Like there was nothing on paper that was wrong. But a manager told me once in the one on one, so what are your career aspirations? Because you're going to be doing this for 30, 40 years. And I looked at her and I was like, like, maybe you're
Am
going to be
I?
doing this for 20, 30, 40 years. I don't think I am. Like, even though I loved the job, I couldn't imagine I was driving. I mean, you're from California, so maybe you
Yeah.
know. I lived in Richmond, California, and I
Hmm.
was driving to Mountain View, which is a 52-mile
No.
one way, yes, through San
That is
Francisco,
torture.
across the Bay Bridge. So 104 miles a day round trip. And when the pandemic happened, I got all that time back. And I started my business in the pandemic. And a couple years later in 2022, actually like January 7th, 2022 was my last day at work. And then I went full time into my business. So I'm still very passionate about money. I have no ill feelings for my time there whatsoever. I just think like my career will always have to do with something around money. And this is this
Mhm.
version of it. That
Yeah.
was that version of it.
Mhm.
And we'll see how I continue to evolve. But I really do think like I remember when I went to the career fair at CCA, California College of the Arts, and I beelined for the Intuit table. And there was no one there. Everyone else was like standing in line for Google or Facebook or whatever. And I was like, I want to work for you guys. And money is the number two cited reason for divorce. And it's so stressful. And I
Yeah.
want to help people feel not stressed. And I told them the first time I used TurboTax, I felt like such a relief. And like, I want to work for a company that helps people do that. I was so in
They're
their
like, who
face.
is
They
she?
were
Oh
like,
my gosh,
oh
what a
my God.
dream.
Yeah, no, they're like, you know who we are. And I'm like, yes. And I'm very excited.
That's
Um,
hilarious.
and and I still feel that way, right? Like I still feel like that is my life's work to help people with money because it's such a emotionally charged topic. It's such a
Yeah.
complicated topic And when you understand it and when you get it and when you heal those money wounds, oh my God, your life feels so different.
Uh-huh.
So that's a little bit about my background.
Well, I'm so grateful that you follow that nudge and your intuition and just went for it. And then also recognize, okay, I'm really passionate about this topic. And you were already helping people one on one while you were still
Yes.
working at Intuit, right? So that's how
Yes.
you started with the coaching and
Mhm.
then going full force. Thank you for doing that because
Aw.
we really need more of this. And especially women teaching other women. And I know you work with all genders, but there's a trend right now with all these financial influencers on Instagram and social media, and it's such a different tone when
Mhm.
women are speaking about money versus the men financial influencers, right?
Yeah.
I find that the men tend to shame a lot, and it also feels like outdated information of how like, it's not practical. There's this one specific person I'm thinking about that's like, "You shouldn't pay more rent than, like, $2,000," or "Your car payment should be whatever," and it's like,
Like
"Have
where in
you"
the United States?
Exactly, I'm like, "Are you even in touch with what the price of markets like, the things are
Yeah.
in market value?" And you don't do that, and that's what I really also have felt. You create a safe container basically for people to just show up and be like, "Hey, this is where I'm at. I've never felt judged by you," even though the first round of the mastermind that I was in with your group, I felt like they were already at a different level. There were a
Mm.
lot of seven-figure coaches, and I was
This
learning from them,
happens
which
a
is
lot.
great.
This
And I'm
happens a lot
like,
in the first round. People go,
yeah, contraction, right? Because it's like, I literally just started investing like 3 years ago at that time, but again, you just create such a safe environment, and I think that's number 1 because what I see and what I have felt with my own clients and myself is just so much shame. And just last week, there was the 50th anniversary of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, which is what gave women the rights and the opportunity to have a bank account, to get a loan, to get a credit card without her husband's signature. So when I came across that anniversary, I'm like, holy shit, like my mom didn't have access to that until she was well in her 20s. And yet, women continue to tell themselves, I'm so bad with money. I don't know what to do. Again, ashamed. It's like, well, we haven't even really had the opportunity. It's like literally in this lifetime that just now we have been able to get this. And hopefully it stays this way.
I saw a TikTok recently of a Black woman who was like, she was shaking a little bit. I just had this realization that, like Black women got the right to vote in 1964. And my mother was born before 1964. So I am the first generation that was born with the right to vote. And I think that the same concept with financial freedom, right? A lot of women today, like in my family, I'm the first generation that was born with the rights to all of the same financial options as men. The first
It's
generation.
so wild.
It's insane. And so to your point, like we're just figuring all of this out for the first time, for the very first time. It really does put it into context because like we tend to think of like, oh, that was so long ago and my great grandmother. And it's like, no,
No.
no, your mother probably.
Yeah. So I know you work mainly with entrepreneurs, but what do you find is some of the biggest blocks that you see? Because you also work with mindset in addition to
Yeah.
the practical and your coaching. How do you hear your clients speak about money and what's a workaround or like how can we reframe
Yeah.
these ingrained beliefs?
There's a couple really big ones, and I tend to think it's sneaky. So it's often not this big wound that feels very emotionally charged that are the biggest impactful ones, which is interesting. It's often sneaky in that people take things that they label as facts
Hmm.
and then they use those facts against themselves. Perfect example is inconsistent income, right? Well, I have inconsistent income. That's a fact. Therefore, XYZ. Therefore, it's going to be harder for me than someone who has a W 2.
Uh-huh.
Therefore, it's harder for me to save. It's harder for me to save for retirement. It's harder for me to pay off debt because I have inconsistent income. That's such a good one because it's true that like businesses all have inconsistent income. What's
Yeah.
not true is all those side effects you just listed. Those are just lack of a system. You
Mm.
don't have a money system that helps you save easily on inconsistent income or pay off debt or save for retirement. And I would actually argue that it's easier to do all those things on inconsistent income. I have been able to achieve so many more financial goals as an entrepreneur than as a W 2 employee with a capped income. So that's an example. And there's so many of those, right? There's so many of those. Another one is like debt is bad
Yes, I'm so glad you're bringing that up because I hear that all the time in my
all the
mastermind.
time. Debt is bad. Or another kind of more subtle version is, well, there's good debt and bad debt. And I just think like there's no room for morality in debt. Debt is a tool that you can use well or poorly. And I'll use kind of a gruesome example. A hammer is a tool, and I could kill someone with a hammer, right?
Yep.
And I could build a house with a hammer. The hammer
Mhm.
has no morality. I do as the user, right? And so debt is the same thing. Like debt has no morality. It's a tool and we can use it really wisely and really strategically and really well, or we can use it really poorly and get ourselves into a sticky situation. And by the way, if you're in the sticky situation, you can get out. There's a million ways to get out. Like it's not the end of the world, but I do think I see this like debt is bad. That's again something that people take as just fact. It's like, well, that's a fact. That is bad. And therefore, I must either A, avoid it at all costs. And especially as business owners, like businesses use debt as a tool. I met my first business owner last week who has never gone into debt whatsoever for her business. My first. And I've worked with over 700 companies, but everybody else has used debt at some point or another in their business. And so if you say, well, debt is bad, I'm going to avoid it, you actually might be missing out on some opportunities for your business to grow. But the flip side is, well, then if I get into debt, the spiral that comes afterwards, right? The like, oh my God, I'm a terrible person. Oh my God, I have to throw my marketing plan out the window because I have to change everything to pay this off as quickly as possible. Da, 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 da. The panic starts rising. And it's like, what? None of that is helpful. None of that is helpful in the long run. And truly, truly, debt has no morality. There's not good debt or bad debt. I will also say the next level of this is interest. Well, okay, fine. Debt is neutral, but only if it's interest free. And it's interest is just a fee. It's a fee for a service, and the service is access to capital. And you pay fees for services all across your business every day, but you don't have some moral quandary about them. I paid Stripe in 2023 $17,000 for the service of charging my customers credit cards. But I don't say Stripe is bad. Credit card processors are bad. I haven't turned my whole business into you have to send me a check in the mail to avoid the Stripe fee.
My
That's
CP
absurd.
asked me, he's like, "Can you, like, just have someone pay you through check?" I'm like, "No," because
No,
also my Stripe fees are really high too. And he's, "It's just a lot of money." I'm like, "Yeah, but I gotta make it easy for my clients. That's the cost of doing business."
what did you just say? Say that again.
That's the cost of doing business.
So is interest.
Yeah,
That's the cost of doing business. Do
yeah.
you know that the IRS in the United States says that credit card interest is tax deductible? You know
Mhm,
why? Because they view it as a cost of doing business.
mhm.
So we get all up in our heads. And by the way, men don't have these conversations.
Seriously, that or the fact I have to remind my clients as well, it's like, how many huge companies have never been profitable? And yet they continue to get
Yeah.
investment and they're trading in the stock market. And it's like, I don't see any shame with them. Like
No,
they're living it up. So why are we
literally.
shaming ourselves?
And I do think that the historical context that you so rightly pointed out at the beginning is such important context because, yeah,
Yes.
we did all just get the right to use debt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this is new for us. So
Mhm.
maybe we're a little less experienced than the men, culturally speaking. But yeah, no, men don't talk like this at
Mhm.
all. I
Yeah.
mean, we see big entrepreneurs like cover of Forbes magazine entrepreneurs who are like, yeah, I bankrupted that company and this company so that I could start this other one. I'm like, they don't have any qualms. They're like, this is the law, this is the system. I'm going to use it to my full advantage.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think it really is a shame that we take so much personal responsibility for
Mhm.
our debt and we take so much personal shame and ownership on when It's really not that deep.
Mhm.
It's really not that deep. You're paying for access to capital. How do you use that capital? If you use that capital well, it will generally generate more capital. If you use it poorly, it probably won't. And then we've learned a lesson and then we can
Yeah.
move on. And that's
I
it.
think from that as well, what I have seen is a lot of my clients, maybe when they were in college in their early 20s, got into a lot of credit card debt. And that has left a trauma. Like, I feel like unconsciously now, they don't trust themselves. I have a client right now in my mastermind where she's been paying down her debt and she was feeling really proud. Well, there was just a hurricane in where she lives. So she had to evacuate. She had to get a rental car. She had to get a hotel. And so she had to put on the credit card. And she was feeling so bad about that. I'm like, this is why credit cards exist, right? For an emergency if we don't have an emergency fund, or like, it doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. And yet there's so much of that lack of self trust, fear around it. And I do work with mainly, not mainly, but a lot of my clients are first generation too. So I wonder if, as well, coming from immigrant backgrounds, like I know my parents, like debt was bad. They used debt to buy their house and occasionally credit cards, but it was always ingrained like pay it all off as soon as possible. And I hear you say, don't pay off your mortgage. Like, what's your interest rate in your mortgage? No, like, no, use that extra money to invest. Have it make money for you instead of just paying it off. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. When you focus on paying down your debt, you're racing to zero, right? Because debt is negative. You're racing to zero. So you're using all your capital to get to zero. And if you do it successfully at the end of it, maybe years later, you will successfully be at zero. Congratulations. If instead you let the debt be on a, debt payoff plan, whether that's paying minimums, whether maybe it's a loan, you're paying monthly installments, whatever that is. I don't want you to miss your payments. But if you let that be and you use your extra capital to instead build income generating assets like a stock market portfolio, well, your debt will also eventually be at zero. But at the end of that long journey, you'll also have a sizable chunk of money in the market that's building money for you. So I would just rather, if this is going to be a multi year process, anyways, I'd rather you not end at zero and instead you end at positive something. And I think that here's another way of saying it that I really like. You can build sizable wealth while in debt, but you cannot build wealth by only paying off debt
That's so good.
ever. Like paying off debt will never build you wealth. Paying off debt may be an important part of the overall wealth picture, but I think that we pedestalize it as the most important financial goal. And the problem, especially for entrepreneurs, bringing it back to my entrepreneurs, is that we might always have debt. We might always have debt throughout the years. Maybe there'll be periods where our business doesn't have debt, but there will always be periods. And so if you're waiting to be debt free, you might wait decades. And the thing that we know about investing in the market is your time in the market is more valuable than literally anything else. So you have just traded away your most powerful asset for something that's just going to get you to zero. And it's emotionally charged, right? And it's all emotionally charged. If any of us, this is, fifth grade math, this is not intense math. If any of us just sit down and do the math, if I pay off my debt, what will the end be? If I do that, the math will tell you the answer, but it's all of the emotional charge that keeps us from A, doing the math to begin with, or following the math. And I think it's also such a culturally ingrained thing, not just for first gen, although that is so real. The never used debt. I think too, like to speak on that, many immigrants who come to this country come from countries who are financially unstable and they have experienced firsthand like seizing of assets, right? I have friends whose like real estate was seized by the government. I have friends whose families' bank accounts disappeared overnight. Or like you see in countries with intense inflation, like all of a sudden your money's worthless. So there is a wound, there is a scar there of I had a really traumatic thing happen to me. I thought we were safe and then we weren't. And now that we're in this country, we have the opportunity to stabilize, but we got to be really careful. And I think that that is so understandable. But what we have to do is we have to ask ourselves, okay, let's say this is my parents giving me this advice. My parents love me. They want me to be safe. They want me to succeed. This is the advice that makes sense from their worldview, from their perspective, from their context. What do I want to do with that advice? And then what do I want to leave and what do I want to take? I do this exercise with my clients called Whose Voice? Whose Voice? So you kind of like sit on something that you've been telling yourself over and over again. And then you just ask yourself, whose voice is that? Is that your voice or is that somebody else's voice? And if it's somebody else's voice, do you still want to listen to it?
Yeah.
But it is deep work, pulling all these things apart. Like when you start this money journey, it can feel like you're trying to grab a cloud. Like it's amorphous, it's always moving. I can't really touch it, I can't grab it. And what we wanna do is we wanna solidify it so you feel like this is a tree trunk. I can wrap my arms around this. I can hold this. I can manage this. And it is a lot about untangling all of the stories that you've been told, all of the, good advice you've gotten, and coming, doing the math, and then deciding the next best step for you.
Yeah. With that as well, I find that people are afraid of making more money. This goes back as well to my first gen because there's this either it's said or unknown like saying where whoever's the successful one in the family, like you go to them to like ask for a loan or help out take care of your parents when they're aging. And I have seen my clients like basically block the next level of income because it's like already I have people coming to me and I just don't want more problems. Like I'm just going to stay in what I already know how to manage and anything above that is too much. It's going to mean that I have to set boundaries or have difficult conversations. And so, yeah, it's very layered. It's not just like getting a paycheck or bringing in revenue from your business. Like there's so much involved. And Gina, her mom is Mexican. And I listened to the podcast interview with your mom. It was so sweet on how her approach and how she wanted you to value like high quality stuff, not just buy for the sake of buying, but like really and also tricked you in believing that you were poor growing up so that you wouldn't have that. I
So
loved
smart. So genius.
but how beautiful, like, that from the beginning, just talking and showing by example a healthier way of dealing with money, but now you're helping us also heal our money stories and to become empowered and change it not just for ourselves, but for future generations.
I will say too on the point of blocking money because
Yeah,
of I don't wanna be the rich one in the family that everyone
yeah.
has all the burden, right? I do think you will have to set boundaries of your choosing,
Mhm,
but and I deal with this with my seven-figure wealth clients a lot. I have a lot of clients who are supporting family. It doesn't have to be all on you.
mhm.
What I tell my clients is, "Okay, let's set up a separate portfolio that you're gonna invest the money in, and you get to decide how much goes into that. Are you gonna put a monthly amount into that portfolio? Is it gonna be a lump sum you're gonna start? And that's gonna be your family pot. This is the money that gets to go to my family. It is intentionally separate from your retirement because I never want you to put your retirement at jeopardy. It's gonna be separate from your goals, but we'll fund it in the conversation. Then if anyone comes to you, you can use that money as you decide. But then it's not on all on you because that money is generating money as well because it's growing in the market. And I have clients who get around the hard boundaries in really creative ways. Like I have clients who say, we do not give money to family, but I'm going to directly pay my grandma's rent every month, or I'm going to directly pay these bills for my dad, right? I don't want to give him cash because I don't trust his, discretion. Maybe there's other things going on, but I'm going to make sure that he has food and water and housing. And I'm going to pay for it from this account that is generating money for me as well. And so I totally hear the like, I don't want to be the bank of the family. I don't want to be perceived as the wealthy one. But the other flip side of that is, but what if you could afford it? Right? What if you actually could afford to to support family in a way that felt good for you without putting your stuff in jeopardy? And you can do that when you have a higher income, when you break through your income, ceilings, and when your money is making money for you. It doesn't have to be this big scary thing, but it can feel like this big scary thing when you're barely making enough money right now to like pay your own rent, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, all this
Those
is
are
to
good
say,
tips. Yeah.
so many people deal with this.
Yeah.
So many people deal with this and at different times as well, right? Like, I'll have a lot of clients who are preparing to deal with it because their parents are aging and they're like, I'm gonna have to step in the next 5 years. So, we're gonna prepare now. And I have clients who are dealing with it currently, right now. Like, I have to step in. So, you are not alone if this is what you're dealing with.
I love that tip though of like, okay, create a separate fund.
Yeah.
And then from there, if there's an emergency or something, like you choose
Yeah.
who gets the money and how, and also paying specific bills. That's really smart.
My recommendation too, and this is me overstepping with a direct recommendation, is don't give out loans. Don't expect to be
Mm.
paid back.
Mhm.
And I say that to say don't give more than you can afford to give
Yeah.
because you don't want to put yourself in jeopardy either. And so when you give knowing I'm not going to get this money back, then you have clearer boundaries about how much you can give.
Yeah. So smart. Can we go back to the credit card? Because I think you
Yes.
have a process on how to help entrepreneurs pay off their credit card
Mhm.
with one click.
Yes. Well, we are in the process right now, actually. I'm very excited. On November, I don't know when this is going to air, but on November 19th through December 17th, in my program, Small Business Money School, I'm hosting a 30-day debt payoff challenge
Ooh.
where we're introducing all new debt curriculum, which I'm so excited about. But the general gist of it is the reason you have debt, when we boil it down, all the way down, the reason you have debt is because you didn't have money.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to solve that problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? We need to solve that problem. And there's multiple reasons why you may not have had money to pay for something in the moment. And what we want to do is we want to make sure you're not spending money on the wrong things in your business. So many people are wasting tens of thousands, if not more, of dollars a year on stuff in their business that isn't moving the needle, but they think they've convinced themselves they need it.
Can you give an example of what that might be?
Yeah. So, okay, you spent $10,000 on a funnel expert to set up a funnel for
Mhm.
you. And then you're spending $2,000 a month on ads. And you're spending an additional $400 a month on the software that makes the funnel work. Okay, great. Cool. That was probably a very intentional choice, right? To like, I'm going to try to do this funnel so I can make all these evergreen sales. And if it hasn't worked at all, like zero, if it hasn't worked at all, it might be time to cut ties with that project or just put it on the back burner, right? You don't have to like disseminate everything, but it might be time to like downgrade the software. It might be time to
Yeah.
stop the ads for a while and try to figure out what went wrong. But a lot of people will say, I can't cut these expenses because then the funnel will stop working. And it's like, well, the funnel's not working right now. So we're wasting thousands of dollars a month on something that's not generating thousands of dollars a month. And by the way, if you're spending $2,000 a month on this project, it better be making you like $6,000 a month in return, not 2,000. And that's the other one is like people will be like, "Well, it's breaking even." And I'm like, "Well, then that's a huge waste of time and money because you're spending money to make the same amount of money, but then you just wasted all your time." At the end of the day, we could have just cut all the expenses, kept the 2,000 and kept your time.
Right.
So people convince themselves like, I need this thing because if I stop paying for the software, then this doesn't work. And it's like, well, do we even need this entire system to begin with? So that's one is we want to like really do a deep dive of your expenses and say, what is truly moving the needle here and what is truly not. We're going to cut ruthlessly everything that is truly not moving the needle. And either A, you get to keep that money to pay off your debt. Congratulations. Now you have thousands of dollars to pay off your debt. Or B, we're going to take that money and refunnel it towards the things that are moving the needle so that they can move the needle more. Right. So that's one of the big problems that a lot of people have, that it's like, we actually have thousands of dollars we could be using to pay off debt right now, but you're just misallocating them. There's also the tax problem. I always say taxes can make a manageable debt situation into an unmanageable debt situation overnight. So we got to solve the tax problem. If you have back taxes, if you're not prepared for this year's taxes, we need to get on that today, especially if you're in the US, right? Taxes are due in April. This is the perfect time to do that so that we don't turn a manageable debt situation into something that's unmanageable. And then at the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to have your business have cash. Once your business has cash in the account, you can pay off the debt with the cash from your account. It's easy to pay off debt when your bank account is full. It's hard to pay off debt when your bank account is empty. Like, shocker. So that is what we're solving for. And that's when, going back to like the one click debt payoff, you can, in theory, build up your accounts by tweaking how you're managing and using your money, and then have the cash to pay off your debt in one click if you so choose. Now, some people do it over the course of whatever months, but it really is about figuring out, why does your business not have cash in it? Because that was the problem to begin with. Solve that. Once you have the cash, then you can pay off the debt.
I love this challenge.
It's going to be really fun. It's going to be 4 weeks. We're going to do emotional regulation around debt, because I believe you can't pay off debt if you're panicked. Because if you're finding, like, truly think about that feeling of panic when it bubbles up in you, you make some bad decisions when you're panicked. So we need to neutralize the panic. We're going to talk about the different reasons that businesses create debt. So I gave you guys some examples, some bad investments. We're going to talk about good investments that create debt. We're going to talk about taxes. We're going to talk about emergencies and mistakes. We're going to talk about so many different ways that debt is created, and then the unique strategies that solve those things. And then we're going to go into a make more money challenge at the end, where it's like, okay, we solved the problem. Now let's go out and make the money to pay off the debt, like today, as fast as possible. So it's going to be 4 weeks, really, really in depth.
And
I'm
this
very
is all in your
excited.
small business school?
This is all in Small Business Money School. Yeah.
Okay.
The final thing I'll leave you with debt too, because I like metaphors, I like to have a visual kind of reference in my mind, is I want you to think about your business as a bucket. And if your bucket has holes in it, no amount of water will fill up the bucket. Most business owners think, gee, I just need to earn more money and then I'll pay off the debt. No, maybe you'll earn more money and pay off the debt for now, but you will build it back up. If you have a bucket with holes in it, it's not ever going to fill. So what we need to do is we need to plug the holes and then add more water, which is that last part of the make more money challenge, because then your bucket will overflow. But yeah, so many business owners just come straight in with, I just need to make more money. And it's, well, no. No, because there was something else that caused the debt to begin with. So
For those listening who are interested in learning more, can you tell us a little bit more? What is the Small Business Money
Money
School
School,
and
yes.
how can they jump in?
Yes. So Small Business Money School is my 12-month program. It's $2,500 or 5 payments of 500. And it is what it sounds like. It is Small Business Money School. We focus on business finance and really solidifying your business finance foundations so that you can be paying yourself a consistent paycheck. My clients pay themselves the same amount of money every month, even if sales are different. We want you to be paying off your business debt, increasing your business cash reserves, your buffers, so that you have the cash to not go into debt again in the future. And then, of course, making sure that you're on track for taxes. We teach you how taxes work, how to lower your taxes, all of those things. We also teach like bookkeeping, truly, if we were just to say it plainly. I have a profit and loss spreadsheet that I designed that is, in my opinion, you guys know I went to design school, right? So I designed my spreadsheets to be easy to use and beautiful and not an eyesore and terrible and awful. So we have a profit and loss spreadsheet. We teach you how to do your own bookkeeping. If you don't have a bookkeeper, this is a great, if you're like just starting in your business, you don't have a bookkeeper yet, this is a great tool to have bookkeeping. But I also have
Yeah.
a lot of clients who have bookkeepers and still do the spreadsheets
I
because they're
love it.
like, it's really important for me to get in there and
Yeah.
understand what's happening, not just outsource this, task. So we really teach you all of the business money foundations that no one ever taught you.
So good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gina. This was so helpful, and you gave such great information and metaphors so that people can start to think about money differently and become unbothered. We
Yeah.
have all of Gina's info in the show notes. Make sure you give her a follow on Instagram. Her content is amazing. Listen to her podcast for sure. You learn so much. and join one of her programs. She has really helped to empower me and how I feel about money and feel like I'm on track. I love using is it the wealth calculator? What did you name it?
Mhm. Freedom calculator.
Freedom calculator. So my dopamine hit is like going to my portfolio. I'm like, okay, where are we today? Even just like preparing for an interview this morning,
Yeah.
I logged into my portfolio. I'm like, okay, it said it was like 170,000. And then I refreshed and then it was up $2,000. I'm like, oh my gosh. In like 10 minutes, it went up $2,000.
That's so
Yay.
exciting. Oh,
And
I
then
love that.
inputting it into the freedom calculator, that also has been so helpful because again, that story that I kept telling myself that I'm so behind in retirement and
Mhm.
I'm not going to have money. Once I put the numbers in, I'm like, wait a minute, even if I don't put
Yeah.
any more money in, like I'm still going to have $2 million
Yeah.
in my account. And then if I continue to put in like $24,000 a year, I'm going to have 5 million. And then that's
Yeah.
like more the goal that I want, like
Yeah.
having about $18,000 monthly
Yeah.
um
Cash flow.
allowance, cash flow, yeah.
Yeah.
So great. Her spreadsheets are awesome.
Listen, that's the thing with the freedom calculator too is like retirement, it's a little bit like weight loss, it's a little bit like these things like health, going to the gym.
Mhm,
We know we should do it to avoid all
mhm.
these, bad things when we're older, but we don't really care and we're healthy now. It's fine now. It's like one of those things that you just put off. So what I love about the freedom calculator is it contextualizes like what you
Yeah,
just shared. It's like no, no, this money will become this money, and
yeah,
that gets a little bit addicting.
it
People are like,
does.
"Oh my god, okay, so wait, if I do this scenario, then what will happen? If I do it makes it exciting again." And I'm like, "Good. Good." Because to the point of what I said earlier, your time in the market is the most valuable thing that you can never get back. We have to make it fun for people to want to put money in the market. So that calculator is a really fun it's a fun tool. It's what got me into my entire financial kind of like the financial independence movement, that exact not that calculator, but that calculation that I learned, it blew my mind. I was like, "Oh my god, this money will be this money in 30 years. That's so exciting."
Yeah,
So,
and then other stuff that you're thinking of buying is like, "Do I really need it or should I
right,
put it into my portfolio instead and have it
right,
grow?" It's really great.
right. Like if I buy a $30,000 car, okay, but that would have been this much if I left it in the portfolio. Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah,
yeah,
so good.
very
Thank you,
exciting.
Gina, and thank you
Thank you so
everyone for
much.
listening. Make sure you give Gina a follow, join her program. She's amazing, and we'll be back next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.